Good evening, everybody. Monday, a little after 8:15. Got a little delayed tonight, but that stuff happens. So we're gonna wait for a second, wait for everybody to jump on here and get going. We've got some good questions tonight, stuff that I don't think we've really touched on in depth. So it should be a good night. And as always, I'll take some of your questions along the way that I will answer either at the end or in the upcoming days. So one other thing I want to mention to you guys too is that my shadow program in June, which will be June 4th to the 8th, I've got one spot remaining. Four spots remaining, one spot taken already. So it should be a good time. Like I said, you're going to be immersed in the whole day-to-day operations of what we do. And it should be a good time, so you can see how we train dogs, how we work with them, work with the groups, run the business, the marketing part, which you guys are obviously seeing as of right now. So it should be a good time. For those of you that are interested, just shoot me a message and I would be more than happy to give you the details on it. So, because everybody is right here, our topics for tonight are going to be dog reactivity towards cats, tick season, which last year was bad, right? I mean, bad. I was talking to a number of vets last year, and man, it was just bad, the amount of ticks that they saw. So it's just going to be one of those things. So we'll touch on that, and then also big dog play and how to handle that. So that's kind of our schedule for tonight. Now, cats. Cats are cats, man, when it comes right down to it. You know, most of the time that old adage growing up that you hear is cats and dogs don't get along. If you ever have that cat, my cats were never this way, but if you ever had that cat that corrected the dog once, just kind of reached around and cuffed at your dog or whatever, and most of the time that sets the tone for what is going on in their relationship. Now that was close. Now, that being said, when you don't have the cat that has the ability to do that, if they don't have their claws, there's all sorts of different things that cats don't do that we want them to do. Either way, you guys, you got to look at it. It's an energy thing. So if you've got a dog that's reactive towards cats, you guys, it also goes back to the threshold piece, okay? Now look, I don't know what dog you have. I don't know how reactive the dog is. I don't know what the cat is like. I don't know how reactive the cat is. So the advice I'm going to give here is very generic. And if you really want to work on it, you probably need to get some professional help, especially because you're dealing with two different species here with two different ways of thinking. That being said, think of it as in terms of threshold. One of the things that we did at one point was putting a cat in a carrier and working the dog a certain distance away from that cat. You guys, I always talk about that threshold. Dog might be good at 50 feet. I was just talking to my take-home session today, going home from board and train. The dog may be good at 50 feet away from that cat. And you can't control that cat. Most cats you can't control. Most cats are going to just do what they want to do because we just live in their world. Now, if the cat's okay in a carrier, then that's great. You can keep them in one spot. But if it's not, you got to somehow keep it in one spot or something along those lines. But you need to find that threshold where your dog looks at the cat but doesn't react. And again, this is very generic. But we have to create that space in order to work with our dog. So at 50 feet, if your dog is okay with it and sees the cat and can listen to you at the same time, then that's the area that we need to work in with your dog, training-wise. So it could be whatever kind of training you want. If you want obedience stuff, throw in obedience. If you want behavior stuff, throw in behavior. If you want the dog to walk with you sideways at that 50-foot threshold, then walk with him sideways. But you guys, the dog is getting reactive to the cat because of space. And also, it could be, again, not knowing dog and cat relationship for the person that asked this, which was Hisham, I think. not knowing the space and everything and what the cat does, it's really hard to say, hey, you need to do X, Y, and Z. To me, it's finding that threshold that works where you can actually, your dog can still function while keeping your cat a certain distance away. So from there, you guys, the other thing too is if your cat is a runner, it's going to kick in possibly to that dog prey drive, which the dog is going to be like, whoa, what was that? I've got to go after that. I saw movement and it was sideways and my eyes trigger on movement and I've got to go after it and chase it. It went around the corner and I don't know where it is, so I've got to go after it. Some dogs it's a game, some dogs it's prey drive, like, hey, I need to catch that thing so I can bite it. There's a lot of different aspects of it. So to me, this is really where it comes down to getting some professional help, probably. But also keeping that space away, again, if it's 50 feet, 100 feet, whatever it is, to where you can certainly work him in that area and then eventually start to get closer and closer and closer. Now, if the cat teases the dog, that's on the cat and on what you do with your cat, which I know zero about cats, other than that they have usually a pretty good energy about them and they tend to control the room pretty well. So it's one of those things when it comes down to managing that situation and being on top of it and supervision and it's managing. It's knowing where both are 24/7. That's all there is to it. So that's really the best way that I can explain that for tonight. It's, again, like when you're dealing with two different species and I can't see how they act, it's hard for me to really give that information. But that's the best I can do. That's the safest, really, I think, for right now. So, so Cindy wrote about ticks. And again, like I was saying at the beginning of this, you guys, I think last year might have been one of the worst tick seasons I've actually seen since I've started about 11 years ago. And it's crazy because I did so much outside here at my house, and there's woods all around. We used to walk an old railroad path, trail, whatever, that everything's pulled up and it's just a path now. I mean, our walk was 3 miles and there was probably a good 1.5 miles of it almost in the woods. Plus I've got woods around here. So for 6+ years, I never found one tick on my dog. But obviously we look at the preventative measures that we can do for them. So one is obviously your flea and tick topical treatment stuff, whether it's Frontline or what is it, Advantage or something like that. I'm not sure. And then there's obviously like the internal ingestible Brevetco. I've heard some wishy-washy things about that. I had my dogs on that for I think about 2 years, never saw anything bad with it. They certainly never ended up with anything either. But Serena, which I don't think she's on right now, who works for me, has put a Seresto collar on her dog, and I know a few other clients of ours who have done that as well for the past year or so, I think, and have had pretty good results with it. So I think it really comes down to what you feel is best for your dog. But as always, consult your vet too. You guys, I'm not a vet. I don't have that knowledge or expertise that they do or what they may suggest, but you just got to do what you feel right doing. And I think the big part of it too goes back to who your vet is. If you feel good about your vet, then you obviously you're going to take their opinion. If you don't feel good about your vet, find another vet. So to me, I think I'm going to probably put the Seresto collar on my dogs this year. My kids are older now, which that was another concern with especially the topical treatment, because my kids didn't, for the last, I've got a son who's just going to turn 5, so a couple years ago at 3, it's hard for, at that age, it's hard for kids to remember things like, hey, don't put your hand on the dog for a couple of days because I got the Frontline stuff all over their back and it's kind of greasy and you don't want that on their hands. So that's part of the reason why I went with the Brevetco, which was ingestible. I knew the dogs were going to be okay, but also the kids weren't going to be trying to pet where all that grease stuff, that greasy ointment, topical treatment was. So I think from there, that's part of the reason why I might probably go with a collar this year, is because they know, hey, don't touch this collar, you can touch everything else, and then just go from there. But that's kind of my opinion. I would like to hear from you guys too as to what you think, what you've had success with. So feel free to fire in the comments here. You might help somebody out. You never know. But that's kind of what I've been doing. Before the Brevetco, years before that, when the kids were itty bitty, I was using Frontline for many years. So. And then you guys, there's I think it's called Wonderside, which is a holistic treatment, I guess, but I think it's almost daily spray or something that you put on your dogs. And who wants to kind of do that stuff daily? It's one of those things. All right, so the other question from Linda, who is one of our regulars, who actually I think just commented above, was the big dog play. Making sure her big dog doesn't hurt anybody, and also to kind of control that dog's intensity. So Linda, if you are still there, I would love for you to throw up on here an example of what you are kind of referring to, since I know you're watching. Yay. So go ahead and give me an example. I'm going to kind of get into my little spiel here first, and then when I see you comment, I'll piggyback off of that. So feel free, don't feel like you're in a big rush to answer here. Now, big dogs, you guys, we had a big English Mastiff who was a brindle with us we had him for almost a week, I think, something like that. And he played with almost anybody and everybody. And he played really, really well. And he wasn't aware of his size. And I think that's really important. And I don't know if that's a puppy thing, how that dog was brought up, his temperament, anything like that. I think that some dogs just have that awareness of their size. Other dogs have no awareness of their size whatsoever. I mean, they are a bull in a china shop. And I've seen a few of those dogs, and you're just like, oh my gosh. So the Mastiff that we had was fantastic, and he played well, and he was soft. But here's the thing. When you have a big dog that isn't aware of their size, that's where you have to be on top of things. So you can actually teach them, at this stage, where if they didn't learn as a puppy, that they're learning now. To me, and I love socializing dogs, you guys. I feel like that's one of my strengths, and I'm only, 11, 12 years into this, and I can't wait to see where it's at, like another 10 years. To me, if I have a big dog that's a little rough, then I need to control his intensity, okay? I need to be able to move in, make a correction sound, and that correction sound can be a snap, a hey, whatever you want, a clap, something to break it up for a second. So when that intensity level gets up, I can make that correction sound. The dogs look at me, or the big one looks at me like, what? All I want to do is just put a pause in there for a minute, just to let him know, hey, I'm on this. That was too much. And then I might back away, let them go at it again, and go ahead and play. But as that intensity rises, every time it rises, I'm moving in again. This isn't a one-time deal, and then we think that, hey, now my